Flutterwave. Now, I know one of the experts, Bwana Elizafan, will be back, but that's not my job to introduce him once again. Over to you, Wahiga.
I think we can give Fred Indimuli a round of applause. He's really helping us move the program along well, and really excited to be here today. In the interest of time, I will quickly introduce my panel and take us to what I anticipate to be a very exciting next couple of minutes as we delve into the dark shadow of fintech. What a title, and we'll talk a bit about that title as the panel kicks off. But let me call my panelists on stage. First things first, let me welcome back Elizafan Mwoko, Country Director and East Africa Business Head at Flutterwave. Elizafan, a round of applause for him as he comes forward. Joining him is Brandon Waweru, East Africa Regional Manager, Codebase Technologies. Welcome as well, Brandon. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Daniel Muchika, who's the Regional Manager, Cross-Border Payments at MasterCard, also joined us for this panel session. Asante Sana, let him also make his way here on stage. I'm also glad to have Isaac Gashugu, who's the Technical Lead Financial Services at Safaricom. Welcome as well, Isaac. Thank you for joining us. And last but not least is Jeff Theuri, Solutions Architect at Zoho, and he also joins us for this panel discussion. Don't get tired of clapping even as Jeff comes forward. Thank you so much. In case you notice something interesting about my panel, we are still celebrating Father's Day, even today. So have no concerns. This was very deliberate. We are inclusive. But this week, we continue to celebrate Father's Day the way we celebrated the International Day of the Woman for about a month or so. At least in some of the panel sessions I was in, we were still celebrating it. So have no concerns about that. You can also share your questions via our social media platforms, and I know the team will keep flashing that on the screen so that we can have this discussion both here and for those who are joining us remotely as well. This panel session is titled The Dark Shadow of Fintech. And you know, sometimes that can sound a bit ominous. Dark shadow. What's this panel going to be talking about? You have nothing to fear. If you think about the shadow, it's always there, always behind the scenes. And isn't that what fintech has become? As we speak right now, some of you are accessing your bank accounts remotely, making some payments, using mobile money, participating in some transactions, funding your businesses from the comfort of your seat in a conference hall at Movenpick. That's what fintech has become, a very real part of our lives, but working behind the scenes. Now, there's a lot of interesting trends behind that. There's a lot of possibilities, and there are challenges as well. And that's what I want to engage my panel on at this time. So really glad to have these gentlemen, thank you for your time today. And I think let's get straight into it. Elizafan, I'll give you a breather for a second just to catch your breath. Let me jump quickly to Brandon Waweru and understand from him right now. Trends, fintech trends, when you look at the next 2 to 3 years, hopefully we are past the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic, but they're telling us it's a sixth wave, so let's keep our masks on. But as we monitor that, what sort of trends do you see moving forward in the space that we find ourselves in?
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Wahiga, for the opportunity. Random thoughts for me, 2 to 3 years, and our prayer is that COVID will not be worse from where we came from. One is we tend to see a trend in buy now, pay later. I know Elizafan mentioned that, and that we'll see especially in this side of the world. It's already moving across the other side of the world, but then coming into Africa, we'll see that trend. Two is something we call open banking or open API, whereby sharing of customer data to third parties with the consent of the client. So that we've seen a couple of clients coming into the market and they are doing it, especially on the lending space. So that we also tend to see a rise on it. Probably I can shoot it.
Data is as good as gold right now, and we'll talk about some of the challenges of sharing data with third parties as we get into the challenges of cybercrime and so forth. But Bwana Muchika, you can also jump in. What are some of the trends that you feel have not been mentioned?
Yeah, I think what Madam Cass mentioned, data protection, that's going to be big going forward as we are fintechs, as also Elisa mentioned, try to get into more partnerships and all that. Data protection is important. For us in Africa, bankable APIs, also I think Elisa mentioned that. It's getting to a point where, because of partnerships, we want to be sure that every fintech has worked on their APIs well. And for me, that is going to be important. Yeah, just those two for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Isaac Gashugu from Safaricom. Even as you think of these trends, do you see challenges behind, what are some of the major challenges that stand out for you when you think about the possibilities for fintech and any challenges that stand in the way?
Thanks, Wahiga. So I think from every opportunity definitely comes with a challenge. And from fintech, especially where we sit, you were talking about Juja boys. I think we've seen a lot of fraud happening. Cyber security is a big issue. And of course, with that comes the regulatory management around the fintech, which to some extent slows down innovation, but it's quite important for us to go where we need to be. Yeah.
So for you, cybercrime is a major concern. And I know you'll tell us maybe a little bit about how you're looking at that from the company that you work for. Jeff Theuri, Solutions Architect at Zoho. Anything that we may have missed out before we dig deeper into this topic in terms of trends and challenges?
Okay, in terms of trends, let me add that I also think that blockchain is going to be a big thing, not yet. Of course, at the moment, guys who are in crypto, we know what
people are nursing wounds or cryptocurrency. I hope you're not going to add insult to injury.
Yeah, but the blockchain technology, I still believe it's something that you're going to see more uptake of it. When it comes to challenges, Juja Boys is being mentioned a lot. As an alumni of there, I'll say, I think opportunities, Madam CS, opportunities, please give the youth opportunities, and we're going to improve our fintech.
Okay. Muchika, jump in before I come to Elizaphan.
Okay, thank you. Just speaking to the question of challenges, I think regulation is a big challenge for the fintechs. And we were just having a conversation earlier on the table there, talking about need for perhaps regulators in this region. Kenya, we talk about Central Bank of Kenya and the region to create sandboxes, and not just standalone sandboxes by regulators, but I mean, like in Kenya, we could say CBK, IRA coming together and creating opportunities for fintechs to innovate. Now, that is a challenge on the fintech side because many of them really struggle with regulations. Thank you.
Over-regulation, under-regulation, unclear regulations? Would just be a bit more specific.
It is. Sometimes we see, the regulator trying to catch up with the innovation. So I don't know how best to put it, but that becomes a challenge because if someone comes up with a solution, but then they are not able to penetrate to make the regulators understand that well. And part of the trends, by the way, I think I left out is virtual cards. Yeah, we're going to see a lot of virtual cards coming into the market.
Okay, very, very interesting. Elizaphan, you can also jump in and talk a little bit about how financial literacy has affected fintech adoption, even as you may also respond to whatever the rest of the panels had to say.
Okay, thank you, Waiga. So to me, what I see as a challenge today, apart from the regulatory and all the thing that the gentlemen have talked about, the user experience, right? Majority of, I talked about, we come up with products, but then we don't think about the user journey. You make a product that is so hard for a customer to be able to use, then they have to abandon shop. You starting payment, and then because it's so hard for you, then you just don't pay with that, and then you say, like, let me just use cash, or just, I don't know whether you've seen some of the payments. I don't want to name some. You're paying for hair ticket, and then you reach somewhere and say, can I call somebody and pay, right? Because paying is hard. And then you have another thing that I see is expertise in some emerging trends. So you have QR codes happening, NFTs, and all this. We don't have enough of those. Waiga, we are talking about the kind of education that is happening today. And this goes to Madam CS. If we're going to train people for 4 years, what will happen is after 2 years, there's a new thing happening. Whatever you went to do in school, by the time you're out of school, it's not happening. So you have a lot of people who are landed, but they are not up to what is happening in the market. So we need to look at that, our education system, and see how we can be able to bring that. So coming back to your question was?
The question was in regards to financial literacy and how it's affected fintech adoption.
I was talking about it earlier. Majority of the products that are built today talk about the people in the city, but majority of the people are not in the city, right? So how, as a fintech, how can you be able to educate people to use a USSD properly? How can you be able to use an app for you to be able to do a transaction? I was talking about the abandoning of a transaction, because people are not well educated to know what the product is, how the journey is. So I think that we need to spend, when you introduce a product, spend money, I don't use money or funds, to train people about your product. Once people get to know the kind of product that you have, then they can be able to use it. So, and then, we have a lot of products that talk about savings, loans and all that, but we still have a lot of unbanked people. I usually call myself as a recovering banker because I used to work in banking. But then banks usually spend a lot of time thinking about the people in the urban areas. So how can you be able to build and educate those people at home, the village, to be able to use these products? The only way you can be able to do that is have products that are somebody in Turkana can be able to use using a USSD, for example, or a feature phone. So those are some of the things that we need to do in collaboration with government, in collaboration as fintech and the regulators.
Brandon, even as Elizabeth spoke a little bit about how fintech, unfortunately, and I don't know if it's the case across all African countries, is being driven largely in urban centers. Those who are designing are living there. Is there a gap? Do rural Kenyans understand fintech like those who live in urban areas do? And if not, what can we do to get it out there? Is that the space for growth that fintech should be looking at?
Well, I think for me, I'll classify it on the fintech education. So there's the awareness bit, there's the financial conduct bit, and then there's the attitude bit towards money. And as a country, probably we are lacking. M-Pesa has taught us. Let's be honest, M-Pesa has taught us how to do transactions. But across different markets, you tell them we transfer money via phone, guys look at you like you're a god. You're like, what?
Yeah.
And that's the reality. So a lot of education needs to go in, the awareness bit, that this thing is possible, coupled with security. And then moving into, yes, when you get the money, then what next? How is your conduct? The challenge is, probably I'll say Kenya or Africa, is we get the money, instead of using it for what we were meant to do, you get the loan, but then you use it for you channel it to a different use case. And that brings a challenge when it comes to repayment. So all coupled with that, then we have challenges when it comes to fintech literacy.
Daniel, I don't want to keep us in the bad news, but we need to talk about the realities of, as much as fintech has provided opportunities, it unfortunately has also provided opportunities for criminals. A criminal wakes up every morning thinking, how am I going to get an extra shilling? And I think it's Elizabeth, I think it's you who said it as an example here. A couple of weeks back, Citizen TV aired a documentary called Committee Call Center, which highlighted how prisoners are making phone calls and convincing people that send your money to this number, you've won this, or your loved one needs this, and that sort of thing as well. What are the most common crimes right now around fintech from where you sit? And what does the market and the stakeholders in this room right now need to be aware of as they think about how to make it a safer space for all Kenyans to play in?
Thank you, Waiga, for that question. I think globally, any CEO who's running, any fintech, any bank would be worried about anti-money laundering and financing of terrorism. Okay, those two things are common across the world. But it boils down to one thing. At the end there, who's receiving the cash? Who's the beneficiary, right? And if you reverse that a bit, then the question becomes, for stakeholders and everyone, and in fact we're having a chat about this. How do you onboard customers, right? Who owns that mobile wallet? Who owns that card? who owns that bank account. Yeah, so all these crimes we're talking about, someone stole money from who, I don't know what. At the end of the day, it boils down, like even the story of committee and all that, it boils down to who owns that mobile phone, then who owns that bank account. I think there was a story about 4 million shillings in a certain account somewhere. Those are the questions. So there are many evil things that are happening. There are possibilities, crime, the Juja boys, as we're talking about them. But it boils down to knowing your customer. If you're able to strengthen that, and that actually expands the question of fintech, we also, there needs to be innovation around that. Around when fintechs are innovating, when young people are innovating, the question should be, what problem are they solving, right? Just opposed to coming up with innovations and more innovations. That also touches on financial literacy. When M-Pesa came up, it was a remittance solution, right? Now, if you want to add more layers of innovation around that, what problem are you solving? I think to me, that speaks to the cybercrime. It's summary of it. Thank you.
Isaac, I'm sure you have something to add on this topic.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not casting aspersions, but...
When Flutterwave talked about Central Bank, Ministry of ICT, and M-Pesa in the same sentence, I took note. I think for me, when you think about the security of the wallet especially, it's a big thing. And when you link that to the financial literacy, then it's something we really have to do as a nation. And I think, as you're saying, rightfully, M-Pesa has shown us that even those remote people that we call uneducated, that old granny knows how to read M-Pesa message. They might not read any other message, but they know how to interpret M-Pesa message. And to me, I see that as a big opportunity in terms of what do we then need to educate our customers on. In Kenya, we have a very poor saving culture. I think we have been taught to earn, spend, and then if you're lucky enough to leave something, then spend. Save it, leave alone investing. So if you talk even about in this room, chances are most of us don't understand the investment opportunities that we can take. So when you talk about the financial literacy, and that's the reason the division I work in stopped being called M-Pesa and we are called financial services, because we need to go beyond people transferring money and making payments to availing digital financial services for our public.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much for that. Jeff here with us. Jeff, I want to segue a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the lack of expertise, where countries lack expertise in fintech app development services. How do you think this is affecting fintech adoption? It may not be the case in Kenya, but maybe across other African countries, but there may be weaknesses here as well. Well, what's your take on this?
Yeah, it's true that a lack of expertise in that domain can affect our fintech industry. What I can say about that, in Kenya we already have the technical know-how. Majority of the youth are exposed to technology solutions. So I think the main issue could be lack of exposure to opportunities or over-regulation, whereby the young people want to come up with a solution, but there are so many limitations which are there, which are going to limit them providing the solutions. Finally, also think an issue on access to capital from investors can be a limiting issue for that.
Okay. Gentlemen, this is a politics-free zone, and I've pledged that it is. Oh, you have one question before I introduce my next one? Okay, Brandon, jump in both of you, then I'll introduce my next question.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about the challenges. So we're talking about Juja boys that are doing a lot of things and all that. And this is, I'm sorry to talk about politics, and you say it's a politically free zone. But then, as a country, how can you, the reason why we have a lot of those guys doing what they're doing, remember they've gone to school. They have the education. The reason why they're doing that is lack of opportunities. Then, as a fintech industry and as a government and regulators, what can we do to be able to bring these guys to do, what they want to do in school? How can they start earning a living in a good way as opposed to doing it from wherever they're doing in Juja or Bometna, right? So the thing that we need to come together and say, what kind of policies do we put together as a nation, as a fintech industry, we don't have to wait for government for everything, right? We need to have an association, there's an association for fintech, come up with what kind of things do we do to help those guys. And if somebody is coming up with an innovation to defraud somebody, because those guys always think about something, and I always say that frauds, I've always been there since time immemorial. I think they say the oldest trade is something else, but I think if you look at even the time of Jesus, even the taxman was trying to steal from people. This always has been there, right? So we just need to find a way of bringing them on board, even if it's exporting the talent somewhere else. I remember what Andela, I was telling the gentleman here about what Andela was able to do to transport, to export the capital to the likes of Wise, Amazon and all that. Why can't we do that as a country and we rake in a lot of millions as foreign exchange? So.
Okay, very good. Brandon, you want to jump in as well before Daniel speaks?
In fact, for me, what I've picked from this is that one of the emerging trends will be ransomware as a service. So that I mean, as Juja boys are thinking, we also need to be thinking on how to counter that. Challenge is we always either caught or just at the niche of being caught, then we sort it out. But then there's a question about expertise. But also the expertise could also be on the regulatory side. And I think that's why we are seeing a trend of RegTech coming in. And Elizabeth mentioned something about Flutterwave in terms of they've already gone ahead in different countries. Then it will help us. Today, if I want to start a business in Zambia, honestly, I don't know anything about Zambia. However, I know I have Waiga, who is my customer in Zambia. Then how do I then partner with this? So also awareness is key. Honestly, I didn't know that bit.
You're my friend.
And I've been his friend for a while. But then now with that knowledge, you see, that awareness then almost kills the expertise side, because I don't need to go and read Zambia laws or how to start a business there. I just need to partner with Flutterwave, and my business, flies in some of these countries are there.
That's a very good point you've raised. Daniel, you can jump in now.
Still on that topic of expertise, I think there's reg, but there's also the business side of things, right? So typically when fintechs look at innovation, they quickly look at developers. But then we're talking about solving problems. So maybe what fintechs should consider, especially those of the startups, those that are coming up, is it is important to have people on their business people on their side who understand problems that they need looking to solve. They may not necessarily be engineers, but then they understand exactly what problem to resolve. Then just a quick one on matters cybercrime and all that. I think as Kenya and across even Africa, there's the question of political will to support fight of cybercrime, right? I mean, in this country, we've seen people, all of a sudden, they have billions of shillings in their account. That is part of challenges we face, yeah, right? So political will is also important, and the matters this is not a political space, but that is also important in fighting crime.
When I mentioned politics, suddenly we went political, which was actually going to be my next question. Now, I know Madam CAS and her team have been doing a lot, rules, regulations, ideas, and so forth. But we know that in the next under 50 days or so, we're coming to an election. And the run-up to that election, presidential candidates moving around the country, making this and that promises. On the fintech space, what sort of conversations would you like to hear from our political class, beyond what has been done by the CS here and her team and her boss? What sort of conversations would you like to see that you believe will help the fintech space to grow faster, to create further jobs, to grow our economy possibly as well? And I want to open it up to anyone who'd like to respond to that.
Okay, maybe I can...
Go ahead.
So, like you had mentioned, there's a lot of concentration of, there's a lot of awareness and information in the urban centers. So what I really think can be useful for startups and fintechs, specifically in fintechs, is government should really enable these startups to set up base in, let's say, small towns. For example, you can say Kisii, Nakuru, Naivasha, or even Kinangop. So that we don't have the concentration in the urban areas.
What do you mean by enable? You want them to buy you the building,
No.
give you tax-free access there? Well, be specific.
Okay, what I mean by that is in terms of, let's say, amenities. For technology companies, we need internet. So provide, for example, if it's ISP providers, they have the enough, strength and capabilities to bring internet to that area, to such areas. If it's road connectivity, because we don't want also to be in a very remote area. If it's in terms of road, if it's in terms of electricity as well. So that sort of infrastructure, so that we can be able to set up base in the small towns. In terms of the founders and the managers for the fintechs, the money that you're going to, the running costs, if they set up base in the rural towns, is going to be lower compared to if I look for an office in, let's say, Nairobi.
Okay, very interesting. So, Brandon, go ahead.
So something else that probably just to overemphasize on what Theory is saying is, and we're having this discussion at the table, is we have got different arms of government. I know the government has a white, they call it a white sandbox or a white box. But then sandboxes in some institutions like central bank. Because one of the challenges we have, and as Elizabeth said, I've also worked in the bank. Sadly, when it comes to regulation, or when it comes to the teams of some of these arms of government, they play catch up. So by the time something is already gone, that's when they're trying to understand what's happening. Yet, they can actually create a sandbox in central bank, and they tell you, Elizabeth, come there, create it as we see. Then we learn. Then as we learn, we're also creating a regulatory framework around it. Then that will help to push things faster. And then there's no hurdle. And also in terms of getting approvals, because that's the other side.
Okay. All right, Isaac, and then Daniel.
I think for me, and we've seen, when we launched the Open API platform, the M-Pesa Open API, today we have over 50,000 registered developers on that platform. And I think when I look at that space, and the majority of the people are, students coming out of the universities, we have the good characters, probably more than 90% out of that. I see an opportunity for innovation to spur from there. You've seen a lot of funders, actually they're out there, globally. There are more people looking for opportunities to invest than the ideas that are coming out of the innovation area. So I believe the government can incentivize the people who are coming out of these technical institutions. Give tax incentives. I don't think people want any buildings to be done for them. I think just make it very easy for them to register businesses, offer tax incentives, and probably more of a starter pack for what do businesses need to do to even be compliant to the regulations that we have in the country. I think we don't have any shortage of ideas. We are a hotbed of ideas in this country.
I feel like I'll give Madam CS at the very end a chance to respond to some of the questions that have been asked here. Go ahead, okay, Daniel?
I think one way government can support fintechs is through creation of laws, and this now goes to the politicians and all that. Laws could be about, one, taxes, as Isaac has mentioned, but it could also be about, say, how much would financial institutions spend on supporting local fintechs, purchasing solutions from local fintechs. When that is created, because banks and insurance companies, we've not had a lot of disruption in the insurance companies, they typically have a lot of money to spend on technology. If they're able to spend on, and most of the times they import this technology, if you are able to support by law local innovators, that would be great. And then, of course, now from there we focus on having developed and grown our knowledge, then we focus on exporting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Elizabeth, come in. I don't know whether the technical team can get a mic to Madam CS. If she's comfortable from there, she'll be able to respond after Elizabeth has spoken.
So my thinking about what's happening come 9th of August is so different from what they are thinking. As a politician, what I'll be thinking about, I'll hire people, right, to come up with a manifesto and all that. And then I will be thinking what Mama Mboga will be thinking at home and all that, the normal things. So can we move away from thinking that the politician will come here and give you policies? Think about you guys, sit together, come up with what are the kind of policies that you want to see. What are things that you want to see for the coming government? If you're powerful enough as an association or as an industry, they will come and listen to you and take notes, right? So we need to organize ourselves in a way that we can be able to present documents to them and say, what is your thinking about this? If you have a following and you're thinking you're going to create an economy, then jobs and all this is how we're going to do. Because some of them, right, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the knowledge that what kind of APIs are needed, or what do we do in what region. So if we can be able to come together and have those and then present to them and let them have a seat and then we discuss those ideas and then we be part of the campaigns or without taking sides, we'll have an economy that is led by fintechs, as opposed to waiting for them and saying government should do me, government. That is not what I think about. I think that we should.
You're calling for more inclusion of the fintech community.
Yeah.
Because of how, and I think it's also because of how impactful and influential fintech has become generally in how we do business and operate in this country. Madam CS, I don't know where you're comfortable speaking. You want to speak from there? I can also welcome you here, whichever works best for you. Just respond to some of the things they suggested you may already be doing. So you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to respond, because I did get a lot of feedback from the panel. Indeed, I do like taking these opportunities to interact with those in the industry, of course on a personal level, because I'm a lawyer, my background is in law, so of course it helps to interact with those in the tech industry. Other than that, that's the whole reason why I'm here as a government representative, to get that feedback from you. How are our policies translating on the ground? How are they working for you? And I was glad to hear the feedback that I got from your end. So I took some points that I picked up as you were speaking. Of course, I was glad to note that you are aware of course, the data protection laws that we have in place right now. We do have the Data Protection Act in place and the Office of the Data Commissioner, which is operational right now with regulations in place, setting the pace for how to protect citizens' data. And of course, we should all be familiar with the laws in that regard. On cybercrime, which is of course a major concern right now, and of course the government is alive to this. As much as we are benefiting from the tech space, we also are aware that there are those who are taking advantage of this space, very smart young people taking advantage of this space. So again, we do have laws in that regard. We do have the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act in place, just to creates offenses around cybercrimes to enable that fast prosecution of cybercrimes, together with the justice system. Other than that, I noted about having a relevant education curriculum. Of course, digital skills is a big part of what we do at the Ministry of ICT. We work together with the Ministry of Education and the KICD, our curriculum developers. And of course, recently you saw that the Honorable CS launched a coding curriculum. So this is an area that we are moving in. We are trying to catch up. Of course, we are alive to the fact that our young learners should also be in touch with what is happening in the digital space as we move towards the future, what I call the future of work. It's imperative that young learners have those digital skills, and that's definitely something that we are alive to and we work on continuously together with the Ministry of Education. On creating an enabling environment in rural areas, I think I did mention in my speech on the various initiatives we have when it comes to connectivity in the rural areas. We have that national optic fiber backbone infrastructure, and it's not just for urban areas. It's for it's for the entire country. When we speak about our programs, such as the Ajira Digital Program, it's set up all over the country. We have our constituency innovation hubs in various constituencies across the country. When we talk about our digital literacy program, we have connectivity in those schools. We work together with partners to ensure that there's connectivity across the country. And of course, even as we, let's say, bring internet to a school, of course, we are with the Ministry of Energy there. They're ensuring there's electricity around there. And not just the school benefits, actually the areas around the school maybe benefits as well. So we are working to have this across the country, not just in urban areas. For instance, the other day I was in an Ajira center in West Pokot, Alale Youth Empowerment Center, and we have young people working on the Ajira digital program all the way there. So we do have connectivity, and if it hasn't reached maybe where you are, it's probably on its way. I think that's what I would say, and I did note, of course, on the incentivizing of startups. The program you are speaking of is the White Box program, Huduma White Box, and yes, indeed, we do aim to create that enabling environment for innovators, and through such forums, we are, of course, open to hearing what we can do more and working together with those in the industry on how to assist you more to grow. Of course, we recognize our youth and their innovative, innovative nature, and we are here to assist them to grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we can give Madam CS a round of applause. Thank you for tackling that. It's not every forum where questions can be asked and real-time feedback given. Now, I don't know how much time I have, but a bit later on, I hope to give 2-3 people in the audience a chance to ask a question or make a comment, and I know Fred will help me with that, depending on how much time we have. A quick reaction, any of you, to have your questions now been answered? Can I move to the next topic? Okay, maybe something else will come up. Something interesting, Brandon, you said about one of the fintech trends at the moment being the ability to sell data with permission to third parties. And I want to see by a show of hands here, how many of you would be happy to know that your data right now is with third parties? By a show of hands. Is it that my question isn't being understood, or that you're not happy? Okay, there's one hand up there. Okay. Let's talk, I want to talk a bit about that. Any comments on this? Because the topic of data is a tricky one, and so I'm very excited to see the growth of the fintech sector. May fintech grow and create jobs across this country. But my data, where is it? Is it safe? What does the future look like? Anybody want to speak? Isaac, I think you start.
So yeah, I think the question of data is the right time. When I look at the social media, the internet in general, when I go to Amazon and I see things that relate more to me, I think that's good use of my data. And as far as going to improve my customer experience on those channels, I really don't care how much information you have about me, as long as it's going to make you serve me better. Now, there's also the question
I think some may care here. They're laughing. Go ahead.
I think which is why they put the disclaimer that you are, and I think we never go to the detail of knowing where exactly is your data going to be used. Now, the risk I see is I might be very comfortable for Amazon to know me so that they can offer me more relevant products. But I have no control over how much data Amazon shares with anyone else who might not be as well intended as they are. And I think that is where the aspect of control and you having to approve whoever is accessing and controlling your data comes through. Now, we've seen that also internally. When you go to take a financial facility, a loan, banks have always asked for the financial statements. Now we've seen customers being asked for M-Pesa statements in addition. And the question is, by sharing that M-Pesa statement, am I also disclosing information about other people who are not party to the facility that I'm taking? Which is why we are seeing more data minimization discussion. But in terms of customers then using their own data for betterment of their services, I think that's something that we have to support.
Okay, hopefully we can hear a bit better as we move on. It sounds like unnecessary evil. Somebody else want to jump in? Yeah. Okay, Daniel, then Elisa Pan.
I think for me, the question of selling of data, it will face the challenges that the insurance sector is facing in Kenya and in Africa generally, and that relates to value proposition to the consumers, right? Because that question, the reaction we've seen in the audience, how will the consumers take it? If those ones who are working on that are able to offer value proposition very well to the customers, then I think it's something that will be adopted. And that goes also for open banking. It's huge in Europe, but here that would be the challenge, value proposition to the customers.
Okay. Elizabeth.
So I want to use an example, right? In the morning when you wake up, you Google that you want to buy, let's say, a shirt or fruits or something, just on your phone, right? And then you drive to which mall? Let's say Sarit. And then before you get into, at the gate, then you get a pop-up on your phone telling you, turn left, you will see a shirt that there are discounts, right? You go in and get the product, right? So what I'm trying to say is data is good, and that big data, that is the next frontier. That is where the gold mine is. So the only problem that we need to look at, and thank God we have Data Protection Act and the Commissioner, we need to look at how can we be able to protect ourselves. I'm sure majority of us here, when you go to a building, somebody will ask you for your name, ID, phone number, and all those things, and we write. How is that used? Is that even legal? But we still do that. So we just need to be enlightened to be able to know when do I give my data. Because at the end of the day, like you say, you cannot be able to know what Amazon want to use your data for. So what kind of data are you giving out there, and how is it going to be used? But data, at the end of the day, is a good thing, and it will change the fintech industry, and it will make your life easier. For you, because at the end of the day, when you're Googling something or you're talking to somebody and you have Siri in your house, Siri will be listening to everything you're saying, and then the next time you go to a shopping mall or to a place, it gives you pop-ups on your phone. It will happen at some point, and it makes it easier for you to know, I can go to Chandarana to buy this as opposed to this because there are discounts and all that. That is all about data. But how are we using it, and as individuals, what kind of data are we allowing other people to take from us? Because I know people usually accept cookies without even thinking what are cookies. So,
very, very, very interesting. Brandon, you look like did you want to say something? Is someone asking a question? Oh, okay, sorry. Brandon, you look like you need to say something, and then I don't know if we have the mic circulating. I'll take 2 questions as we wind down.
I think for me, in summary, I would want my data to be used for good cause. I also want to know how much I'm saving or how much I'm spending. That data helps me to go back into my budgeting, and also just to curb what my friend said that you're bad in saving. I just want to know, because I learn something out of it. So in summary for me is, my data should be used for a good cause. I don't want to belabor on any of the point that has been shared.
Okay, all right. And Jeff, any comment, or you feel it's all been said?
Okay, for me, it's a yes and no type of question, because when we talk about, let's say, payment integrators in fintech, they're providing solutions for businesses. We provide software for businesses. We provide the software solutions that companies are using to run their operations. Now, I wouldn't want these payment integrator, because now I'm their customer, to sell my information to a third party as a business. So that's why I can say no for that.
So yes and no. Okay, let's see what we have from our audience here today. In the interest of time, I'll only take 2 or 3. And I thought I'd have to beg. People are already getting their hands up. Do you have a microphone on any of them? As you stand up, please introduce yourself. Tell us which company you represent here today. And then briefly pose your question or comment.
Good morning. My name is Kenneth. I'm from Multichoice, Kenya. My question is just an ask in regards to the Juja Boys options, whereby I think it's important to get the guys who are going to the back-end system and actually cracking that particular code for the system to be felt, to be understood better, as opposed to pushing these Juja Boys to an extreme position of taking them to jail or anything. So the point is just to understand what it means or how they hacked the system. So it will be a very good, it will be an interesting observation for the solutions to be gotten from that particular feedback. Thank you.
Okay, I assume that was to the Safaricom representative. He'll respond to it with time. Let's take another 2 more maybe. Let's take from this side, and then I'll come and take another round from that side of the room.
Good morning. My name is Innocent. I'm from Postbank, Kenya. My question goes to the tech guys there. on SIM swipe. What are the tech industry doing about it? Secondly, don't you think the availability of easy loans through mobile is affecting our savings culture?
All right, can we get one from a lady now on this end? Then we'll get some answers, then I'll come to that end. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
My name is Shelley. I think my question is to the panel. I don't know if you've heard about the bill that the government is trying to introduce for fintech that affects your industry, and I don't know how you feel about it, because I feel it will also affect some of the startups in terms of the Gen Z generation, which is more leaned into that, into your sector, and I don't know how you feel about it. I don't know if you're fighting about it, because I think you should. Unfortunately, I think the CAS has left, but I thought one of you would raise it to her, but I'd like to hear your feedback on the same as well. Thank you.
That's a powerful question. Thank you for that. I'll come and do another round. Let me get one or two responses here. Isaac, I think you need to say something.
Yeah.
First.
So, I think first on the issue of SIM card, so we are definitely looking at that, and the challenge that we've seen is with the interoperability, especially of the mobile wallets. It's an industry thing, so it's not just Safaricom or Airtel or Telcom. We are working now more closely together to ensure that we can clip that at the root. We are also tightening the controls around our agents and people who are able to do the SIM swap itself. At some point, it might become more painful to customers. If you lose your SIM card, then there's a whole process of you getting, going to either to the shop or you can swap in certain hours. It's just a balance of customer experience and also protecting your wallet, but we are definitely working very hard on that one. On the Juja discussion, I mean the fraudsters, unfortunately, as far as I see, they actually do more social engineering than core backend kind of trying to hack. And they also take a lot of time to test our products. So we actually, take a lot of feedback from what happens in the market. Sometimes we don't test as exhaustively as they do, but we are always, trying to improve on that. So yeah, I don't think we've gotten to a point where we are hiring those guys who are hacking systems. Maybe we need to have a process to get them on board, as you've seen in the developed countries.
Okay, go ahead.
Question. I think it's a very tricky balance. In fact, we're talking about it. Isaac mentioned the other day they launched a product that is Sharia compliant. But then the tricky thing is to understand who in the market is actually a proper consumer, target consumer. And that goes the same for a lot of credit availability in the market. I think perhaps those ones offering credit could, and they have tried, by the way, offer financial literacy lessons to the consumers. But at the end of the day, it boils down to ethics and responsibility on the other side. It's a very tricky balance. Perhaps the one who's asked that question, or anyone, can think of a technology that can help, help people save more at the same time while they have access to credit. But I think the thinking behind access to credit is that when small traders access credit, then they're able to, improve their lives around that. That's the basic thinking. So it's a tricky question. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon, briefly, then we can pick the second round of questions. Or Elisa also want to say something. Okay, briefly, please.
I wanted to answer the question that the lady asked there about the new act. So my position is that if we start regulating, for example, all the people are in technology, what will happen then to startups and fintech? We'll end up having, the economy, the whole industry will die. Because if you look at the specifics on that act, say somebody has to have a degree, or so you have to register and all that. So the reason why I don't think that act is good for the industry, because it will just dismantle everything that we've worked for. And I know the position of the ministry from the CS that they don't support the bill. I hope the president doesn't assent to it because of those reasons. But then we need to go back and say, how did it go all the way to the president without making noise about it? So which part did you play as a person who's going to be affected by that bill? So we need to start, like I keep on saying, the advocacy should start with us, that we can be able to, anything that is touching you, you're supposed to cry and say this is not happening. Together, we can be able to change that. So.
Thank you for that. Okay, let's pick the other round of questions. We'll try and do 4, and then they'll respond, and we'll wrap it up there. Whoever has a microphone, where are we? Let's get some questions and comments as well.
Hi, good morning. Isak here from cm.com. I listened to you speak about security awareness, data protection, and communication, education. So my question is, as we move from one-way communication with customers into things like conversational commerce, what is your, as an industry, what does your digital communication strategy look like?
Digital communication strategy. Okay, they'll respond to that. Okay, let's pick another question or comment.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Dennis Oteko. I come from Cooperative Bank. A quick one. First of all is to acknowledge that there's a lot of development that is going on in the fintech industry. It's good to note that over time, we are now moving from discussions of growth to now what we're discussing right now, the dark shadow of fintech or the unintended consequences. So towards that end, I would just like to ask the panel, how does a fintech, or how do we address how fintech implies, for example, social imbalances through inequalities, exclusion, or discrimination through our AIs and algorithm biases, or towards that end again, how fintech drives deviant behavior on the platforms, for example, online gaming, betting, for example, compulsive buying, all these intended consequences. Are we as an industry going to require ourselves to self-regulate, or would we then now need somebody to pinpoint this as the dark side of fintech so that this is brought forward for our discussion? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. To self-regulate or to wait for government to clamp down on the sector, if that will even happen, that's an interesting question. Okay, let's pick another 2 more.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Ziana Muhammad, and I'm from Kenya Bureau of Standards. I really like Elizafan's argument about decision-making and policy direction actually beginning from the grassroots. One of the, let me say 2 of the biggest things that kills us as Kenyans, or we're shooting ourselves in the foot, is not exercising our rights as per the Constitution. Chapter 1 of the Constitution says sovereignty is ours. Yeah? A public participation is a requirement of law. There's no way a bill can be passed. There's no way a regulation, a policy, none of these things, even the budget, can be passed without you, the Kenyan, at ward level, giving your feedback. In Nairobi, I see people aren't as active in participating in such processes, but before they even initiate such processes, timetables are sent out for all government organizations, by the way. Timetables and schedules are usually sent out in the national dailies so that people can be able to know where they'll be at. At your ward level, I'm sure you guys have Nyumba Kumi initiatives wherever you come from. Your chief should know. Your mzee wa mtaa should know when they're coming to the ward level. So if you say you don't need to fight for your voice to be heard, there's an opportunity for your voice to be heard. I originally come from Kilifi County, from Malindi. We have sent back bills, we've sent back budgets, we've sent back all these things, and they cannot proceed for it to get to even Parliament if they have a sub-county or a ward saying, we don't believe in this thing. So you have an opportunity. If there's those clauses saying that you have to have a degree and what, where was your voice when you read that statement, and what did you do to submit your feedback? So let's take advantage of that.
Thank you. A question and a challenge at the same time there. Let's get one last one. I think she's been waiting with her hand up. And then we will allow some final comments from each of my panelists.
Morning. My name is Martha Wambui from Travelport, which is a travel technology company. My question to the panel. in first world countries, most of them do data protection act. Actually, every company is asked to do like a whole survey or can I put an assessment whereby you're certified and you're asked that you have to do a certification at the end of it. So my question to you, do you do that as a company? And what education do you give to the public? Because until a few months ago, Safaricom came up and everyone was in uproar saying, oh, they're using our data to sell to other people. So what education are you as fintech companies giving to the public about data protection?
Okay, thank you. We're going to stop it there. I'm going to take responses and final comments from each of my panelists at this moment. Jeff, I think let me start with you. You can pick the question you'd like to respond to as you give us your final comment.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to respond to the question on the bias by AI. In fintech, we have something called KYCs, the Know Your Customer. So you'll find that if I need to do the facial recognition, sometimes the system will tell me, lighting is bad. It'll tell me, there are such issues. So a solution for that could be, can be, since we already have the technical know-how for, we have young people who can come up with solutions for that. We build our own solutions for that instead of using external APIs or artificial intelligence solutions for such cases.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Isaac, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I'll pick the last one as my first response on the data protection. So as Rach is saying, it's something that has been in the cooking for quite some time. Until the Data Protection Office was formed, I think in terms of the awareness, how data should be protected and what is sensitive information. So in Safaricom, there's a lot of internal staff awareness on what is sensitive data, how do we protect data from being shared out, and what then do we need to do. Now, the unfortunate position we found ourselves in is a lot of businesses have built their logic around the mobile number as a unique identifier on how they serve customers. A lot of them have automated their services. When you pay to Kenya Power, they're able to dispense to you the token using the mobile number that we supply to them as part of your payment. So just looking then at, if you backtrack that a bit and ask yourself, would Kenya Power in that context also be required to protect that data that is passed to them? Or do we need to then stop sharing that data with Kenya Power and figure out a way for Kenya Power to serve you using mobile number without them knowing your mobile number? So we're engaging the industry to figure out what is the best approach to not disrupting the businesses, but still protecting customers' privacy. And it's an ongoing conversation that we need to conclude, including the Data Protection Office for that. On the two-way communication, so you're right, a lot of times the corporates especially, we have this habit of just sending messages to customers and just feeding one-way traffic information to customers. Thanks to technology, I think with our apps now coming up and more people transacting using the smart channels, we then have the opportunity for customers to feedback, either even rating a transaction, which is some of the things we'll be seeing out of our channels, giving us feedback on how did you enjoy the experience interacting with our channels and where else can we improve. Again, just like any other innovation, some customer will one day wake up and say, I gave you this feedback, you've created a product out of it, I want revenue share from it. So it's just how do you protect getting feedback? How do you balance getting that feedback from customers, more of crowdsourcing ideas, but it also depends on what do customers see when they're engaging with you. Am I seeing that I'm being an innovation arm for you and then you need to pay me? Or am I proposing that you improve your product so that I can get a better experience out of it? So I think just taking that balance between crowdsourcing ideas and what customers might see as stealing their ideas, as Kenyans like calling it, is just a balance that we need to strike as we get this coming, as fintech, not just Safaricom.
Thank you for that. Daniel, jump in.
Thank you, Waiga. As a closing remark for me, a little bit on data protection. What I've seen in international platforms, and I do not necessarily speak for my employer, is that when there's integration, as Lisa Fan put it, between fintechs, there is also a push to comply, locally on matters of data protection. Like when the GDPR came out a few years ago in Europe, quite a number of fintechs that were, integrating with the fintechs out of Europe. They had to respond to that. So I think we're going to see a lot of that happening now that there's a law in place. And yeah, it's an interesting space. Thank you.
Well, for me, self-regulation versus government regulation, double-edged sword. And here is one of the things about human beings. About human beings, sadly, is we tend to do the things we told not to do. Naturally, from children, we tend to negate what you're being told to do. That's exactly where you're going to. So, yes, we have to be self-regulated, but also you need somebody else above you just to correct you when you're going wrong or when you're trying to shift from the way. So, in as much as you want to be self-regulated, I believe there's a need or there's a gap for that government regulation. That's important. A third eye is very important when it comes to fintech space. Yeah.
Thank you. And Lizapan, you have the last word. What's it going to be?
So I'll answer the question about customer experience. So today, if you're going online, right, you need to think about what kind of channels that you put in place. Majority of the people will be on WhatsApp, so you need to have WhatsApp chats. You need to have a chatbot. You need to have, in our case, you have so many of those customer service, call center, you have a technical account manager and all this. But what makes it easier for majority of the companies to, how do you interlink all this, right? If a customer comes on WhatsApp, this information that they put there, or chatbot or call center, can we get it in one centralized system? So that is what makes it easier for somebody to be able to even follow up with a customer, because it doesn't matter which channel you brought in, the same information is on all the system. And then finally, I want to think about fintech. My thinking today should be about I've built REST APIs for everybody. I've built, have knowledge across Africa or across the world. So as a fintech, don't spend a lot of time innovating. I mean, it's good to innovate. If your innovation is in a particular area, let's say you want to do buy now, pay later kind of a product, stop thinking about payments. Somebody else has thought about payments. Focus on what you know, partner with the other person who will be able to do payments. If you're doing loans, think about KYC. There's somebody else who has done KYC. How can you partner with that? If you want to go to Uganda, think about what is that Flutterwave, for example, has done in Uganda. How can I use that license that they have to be able to penetrate that market? So that is what I will ask everybody to think about. How can we partner together? And then my last question to everybody, how many of us will vote on the 9th August? Be honest, please. So what happens to those who answer down? What happens when somebody will come up with a policy that will take away your livelihood? What will happen when that road where you stay at home is not built? Who will you complain it to? Will you be saying this government is not working for me? So we need to start thinking about taking responsibilities, taking charge, because majority of us, majority of the people are learned, majority of them, they don't even want to think about the government. But the government can never change if you don't participate. And the first thing to do is vote in the leaders that you want that can be able to change where you want your world to go to. If you want somebody who will bring in policies about technology, vote that person, lobby for that person without thinking about, am I paid? Kenyans are very good. They always think about, kama sijalipwa, I'm not campaigning for you. But then you don't know that this person will go back, make policies that will affect you. So everybody, think about it. Let's participate, and so that we can change this economy and make fintech a better place as we translate payment across the world. Thank you.
And that's how we wrap up this panel discussion. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for my panelists. A call to action. Gentlemen, thank you so much. You may take your seats. We've had Elisapan Mwoko, Country Director and East Africa Business Head, Flutterwave. Thank you. We've had Brandon Waweru, East Africa Regional Manager, Code-Based Technologies. Daniel Muchika, Regional Manager, Cross-Border Payments, MasterCard. Isaac Gashugu, Technical Lead, Financial Services, Safaricom. And Jeff Theuri, who's a Solutions Architect at Zoho. Thank you so much. I hope you've learned something. If your question wasn't tackled or your comment wasn't responded to, I believe they'll be around for another hour or two, if not longer, and you can see them during the break to engage further with them on what I believe has been a very, very engaging session. My name is Wahiga Mwaura. It's been a pleasure moderating this panel session. You can also clap for me. It's not a bad thing. And let me call Fred Indimuli, our super MC, back to the stage. Fred, do you know where your data is? I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Very interesting question. Thank you, Wahiga. Round of applause for Wahiga Mwaura. Good job, well done. Thank you so much, Wahiga, for that engaging panel discussion. Thank you so much to your panelists and, of course, to the audience. I didn't believe we could get so many questions from the audience. Clap for yourselves, tafadhali. And for keeping time as well, because now we're right on time for our coffee break. And let me just give a teaser of what's going to happen after the break. Now we've been discussing about fintech, and Elizafan mentioned something about customer experience. And that's a sphere we're going to be venturing into after the break. We'll be discussing more on customer experience. Is customer experience a support unit or a revenue center? Yes, that interesting panel discussion will be moderated by Steve Abeka, and I'll be introducing him after we come back. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to take that coffee break. We'll be taking about 10 minutes or so. We are slightly late on the program, so 10 minutes, then we'll be back. We'll be discussing all that. I'll see you after the break.